Hello, this is Brett Knowles from PM Squared Consulting. This is a quick overview of how you can run your quarter-end OKR refresh process using a whiteboard like Mural or Gtmhub's whiteboard functionality. Okay, so here's how we do it. Sync this as your template that you're going to set up for every department. Every department, there's going to be 4 areas where I put in the corporate objectives from this new refresh quarter, previous quarter for this department, the impacted on and impacted by section, and then finally where we do the refresh work. So what we should be able to do is grab the objectives for this quarter. So again, leadership has met, done the retrospective, developed new objectives or new key results for this particular quarter. So this is the new North Star that we need to align against. And so these are in this example, 4 objectives that we need to worry about. And for the department, what we should be able to do is grab the department objectives from the previous quarter. So these have not been refreshed. These are what they ran with last quarter. So this is a setup. You can have this on your whiteboard in advance of meeting with the team. And I envision the standard cross-functional members of that team in the room. Got it. So this is where they come in the room. We introduce the new strategic objectives and key results. Step 1 of the team is to say, let's take a look at these refreshed objectives and answer 2 questions. Which of these do we have an impact on? In other words, for example, let's say for drive sales, we have an impact on driving sales. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab that objective and we're going to plunk it down here saying, okay, this is one that we have an impact on. And then impacted by is, given that objective, are we impacted by it? So in this case, the objective of improve operations, hey, we're impacted by that. Based on those numbers, that is going to impact what our options are. So what your team will do is take a look at these objectives and determine which ones we are impacted by and which ones we have an impact on. Now, you'll see in this case, there are 3 example objectives that we now need to respond to in this quarter's objectives. There's also one up here that we don't have any impact on or are not impacted by. So we just leave that alone. We don't need to worry about this one. So this becomes the completion of step 1 from the department. They've now identified, based on this new strategy, what things we need to enact a change for. And this is just a technique to identify these 3. Once you identify them, we can just move them all over here as step 2. Eventually, we now need to find out what are our objectives that will contribute to these corporate level objectives. So the step 2 is we just move them over and say, great, these are the 3 that we now need to worry about refreshing. So that completes step 1 and gets us set up for step 2. Okay, so now comes the serious thinking part. We've identified which of the corporate level objectives we now need to respond to for this quarter. What we're going to do first off is find out how many of our objectives from last quarter are still in play. So for example, I might take a look at some of these objectives from last quarter and decide, you know what, in terms of drive sales objective at corporate, our objective from last quarter of build pipeline is still relevant. Now, I may need to change the wording on it slightly. I may need to change the key results, or more importantly, the key result targets, but I can salvage that one. I may discover that this lead development objective is the one that links up to new products. So again, I'm just going to grab that and pull it forward. We may still need to change the name or change some of the key results or the key result targets. Now, we may have other key results that we think we should still deliver on, but they don't necessarily link to the corporate level ones. So this example, we have the objective of build the brand. Even though it doesn't link to any of these 3 objectives, we think we still need to work on it. Now, again, in this case, you may end up with some objectives that I had in the previous quarter that I'm not going to carry forward. Those are ones where we've completed that term of reference, or the company's needs have changed and I no longer need to work on that objective. The final scenario is where I may have to create a new one. So maybe I've got to create a new objective, in this example, improve operations in my department in order to respond to that new corporate objective. So again, by the time the team is done, we would have pulled forward any previous OKRs that still make sense and tweak them to match the current objective, the current key results, and the current key result targets. Or I may need to add in new objectives, and I may need to get closure on previous quarter objectives. So by the time we're done this part of the work, we end up with the scenario of what are the objectives that we're now going to run forward with this quarter. Now, at this point, you have the choice. You can do the standard report out to the rest of the team, whatever the approval process is. But again, we're now at the point where we're ready to finally, after those conversations, launch those as live objectives. So in the case of Gtmhub, all we need to do now is press Publish OKRs once you've selected these new OKRs, and let the system know into which model you're going to be plunking these, and you've now updated your OKRs for the next quarter.